So the
Welcome back. I'm Uday Pratap Singh. You're joining us on NewsX. United States President Donald Trump's announcement of the India-US trade deal has caused celebrations in India. The exporters who have been given much-needed relief have celebrated the loudest and praised PM Modi. Opposition in India has questioned, though, the details of this deal, but the government has clarified that no compromise has been made on farmers and dairy. While that is how India has reacted, US too has been celebrating. When the India-EU deal was signed, the US government's reaction wasn't positive, but this deal has been timely, and it means that US signs one of the deals it has pursued for a long time, and that has caused cheer there too. Trump, though, has said he wants India to stop buying Russian oil, instead buy Venezuelan oil, and also buy 500 billion US products. While the media, though, has cast some questions on this. Conservative media has, of course, praised Trump for this deal. Liberal media, though, has questioned him too. Joining us live to discuss this now in further detail is Peter Cardillo, Chief Economist for Spartan Capitals. Also with us, Arvind Mahajan from Lamar Savings. And we have Raymond Vickery, International Affairs expert, also joining us live in the broadcast. Welcome. Thank you all for being with us on NewsX. Let me make a start with you first, Peter Cardillo. How is this deal really being perceived in the United States of America? The modalities of it now that have been finalized between the two sides. It has been a few weeks in the making, but now that it's finally done, how is it being perceived and responded to in the US where you are?
Well, I think, first of all, it's a relief for India, obviously. And here in the States, I guess we view it as somewhat of a victory, another trade deal. I think the real question is, what did your prime minister have to give up to get to this deal? And of course, we know that President Trump basically wanted that he would not purchase Russian oil. Now, we know that Russian oil is cheaper than Venezuela oil. So from that perspective, it's a little bit of a victory for Trump. And I suspect that somewhere along the line, the other agreements of other trade matters will prove beneficial for the Indian economy.
Yes, indeed. Arvind Mahajan, if I can quickly bring you in here now on this deal, the kind of ripples that it's having around the US, also what you're picking up from the media reportage on it, from also what the Conservative Party and the Democrats are saying about the deal as well, and also Arvind on US business as well. What is the corporate? How is corporate? How are corporates in the United States reacting to the modalities of the deal which have finally been agreed to? The fine print is still to come, but the broader aspects have been put out by both sides' heads of state.
Well, I think if you look at what happened...
That question, I'll come back to you, Peter. That question is for Arvind.
Well, I think the response of the US corporates has been muted. I think as a generality, getting a trade deal is a good thing. It's a good sign because basically it's just opening up the markets. And it's a good thing for India, it's a good thing for the United States as a general principle. I must say at this point, I really don't know much about the details. And in trade deals, the devil is always in the details. Are they something which are legally binding, or are there things which are just words and countries can easily revert back to their original behavior? So I really don't know very much about what has come out other than what President Trump has said and some people in the executive branch in the US have said. But India has maintained a very astute silence, which really makes me wonder what the fine print is going to be. I really have not heard. I mean, for example, it's a big deal if India indeed agrees not to buy Russian oil. That is a big deal. If India agrees to put zero tariffs on American imports into India, that's a big deal. If India says we are going to remove all trade barriers, non-economic trade barriers for American goods into India, that is a big deal. If India opens up its agriculture sector, that is a big deal. I just cannot imagine that India would have agreed to all these terms, which I am hearing from the American side, India has agreed to. As a matter of fact, there's an article in today's Wall Street Journal right in front of me where the journal called the Indian embassy in Washington, and it said the Indian embassy didn't respond to requests for a comment. So I'm very curious why a lot of news or whatever has come from the American side, but very little has come from the Indian side, other than both leaders congratulating each other that the two great democracies are going to start engaging each other in a healthy way again. So I think a lot remains unclear at this juncture to me to be able to assess the aggregate impact of this trade arrangement with the United States. I will say, however, given how long this process has lasted, and indeed President Trump had made some provocative statements about India, as well as Prime Minister Modi and the administration, that Prime Minister Modi had maintained a very astute silence throughout this period. So I think, I mean, it's unclear to me who called first, but it seems to me that it was not necessarily a win for the US. It's always a win-win when you have these situations. It's unclear to me who blinked first. And my instinct tells me that in this one, the US blinked. Because India signed 5 trade agreements over the last few months, including the big one with EU, supposedly the mother of all agreements. And this US thing coming so quickly after that makes me suspect that there was pressure on the US to put a closure on this, because this whole arrangement was pushing India towards Russia and China. And also, I must say, from what I understand behind the scenes, the other big issue is the role of the US dollar in international trade. And I think India has been, if you will, in cahoots with Russia, with the BRICS and other countries in trying to find bilateral trade agreements without the US dollar being the intermediary currency. The signed trade agreements going directly from rupee to ruble, and other countries have been doing that, and that certainly impacts the hegemony of the US currency in the global market. So I think this has to be seen in the larger context of how US is viewing these tariffs and their consequences, not just on the soft power, but also on the economic power of the United States, and in particular, the role of the US in international trade. And that is a big thing, because if we look at the aggregate role of the US as a reserve currency, the numbers have been declining over the years from 70% to 60% to, I'm hearing more recently, 58%. Simply tells us the appetite for holding dollars is diminishing.
Right.
And when that happens, the US interest rates go up. And given our ballooning trade deficit and domestic deficit, the interest payments in the US budget go up dramatically. And we all know the consequences of increased interest rates in the economy. So I think this issue of India-US trade is it has a lot more larger parts to it than simply just India-US trade.
Okay, let me quickly get in Raymond Vickery's perspective as well. Raymond Vickery, what did you make of the finality of this agreement, the timing of the announcement as well? Also, What are the reactions you're picking up in the United States where you are that you can share with us today from the corporate side, from policymakers side, from the government side, from of course the media as well, and their reportage of this agreement and the wordings of President Trump's statement on social media?
Well, thanks very much for having me and allowing me to comment. The U.S.-India relationship has been on a downward spiral for the past year. These two greatest democracies, largest democracies in the world, need to be able to work together on a wide range of issues. And economic issues and strategic issues, keeping the peace, are joined at the hip. They're not in separate worlds. So the agreement if it is an agreement, really, it's really more of a framework. Is welcome to stop the bleeding, stop with the downward spiral. But the reaction from both U.S. policymakers, commentators, think tanks, business has been remarkably muted here in the United States. In part because it's sort of same old in terms of what the Trump administration has been trying to do with tariffs around the world. And it is completely unclear as to what the final result is of any of these agreements, whether they be with Japan, Indonesia, EU, UK, because what President Trump does is play this for television, giving a few headlines and then not really having details about what the actual effect is. And the Indian-US agreement, as I say, it's not really an agreement at this point. It's more of a press release and comments on it is part of that picture. The real question here is how you're going to get U.S. and India to be able to cooperate on peace and prosperity around the world as the two largest and greatest democracies. And that's whether it be in Ukraine, whether it be in regard to China. One hopes that the Quad now, which the meeting has been put off really for more than a year, was supposed to happen last year in India at the summit. Perhaps those things will go forward now again. So there's somewhat of a sigh of relief. But as far as saying that this is opening a new chapter or resolving the problems, it's really too early to tell, and it really seems to be a piece of what's going on, which may not even be legal under U.S. law. That's now at the U.S. Supreme Court and has yet to be decided. And you just cannot take Trump's statements at face value. The $500 billion in purchase. What does that mean? Over what period of time? If it's really a $500 billion purchase in a year, that's really impossible because it's about $200 billion in total trade now. So what does it mean? And people really don't know. But in the United States, that's kind of what we've come to expect over the past year with the Trump approach to not really how you work together to build peace and prosperity, to uphold the principles of non-aggression, those of the UN Charter. It becomes a transactional approach. And at this point, Trump will claim a victory here and really move on to the next until he figures that something else can be done to help him in the next transaction. This is a complete break with what we've been doing both under Republican and Democratic presidents in the United States for the past 3 decades or so, where we've tried to bring about a relationship between these two greatest democracies rather than looking at it just on who got what on this particular day at this particular time. But these are the parameters that we have to work with now. So all in all, yes, this is a good thing, but it is not something which is being welcomed in the United States as any different from what's been going on. And I would say that the jury on the effectiveness of tariffs is really very, very much out, not only at the Supreme Court, but in the American public, because inflation has not gone down, contrary to what President Trump is representing. Jobs in manufacturing have not come back in terms of what he's saying. And he's really trying to do what a reality TV star does in terms of creating a reality which does not exist.
Peter, also, now that these issues have been ironed out, the outstanding ones of the trade modalities and Russian oil and whatnot, and Trump wants to put that baggage behind because he said all of that, of course, has been agreed to, whatever the outstanding issues were. How do we move forward now and begin to converge once again, as we did on the other issues that define our partnership apart from mere trade?
Well, first, let me just say that I do not totally agree with both of your guests, and I do agree that this deal is somewhat cosmetic, and that there are very few details. They're quite scant in terms of knowing exactly all the details. But again, I think the EU agreement certainly prompted President Trump to come to some sort of cosmetic deal as he announced. Now, going forward, we'll just have to wait and see. And I think the real key here is the purchase of Venezuelan oil. Will your prime minister really agree to that or keep his promise? Remember that oil prices, oil prices offered by the Russians as opposed to what they will be offered by the Venezuelans is pretty much, there's a pretty much difference in prices. And the bottom line here, what will that mean for for India? Are they going to sacrifice and spend more money for oil and create perhaps inflation bigger than what it is? Or will they resort to buying Russian oil because of the cheapness? I think that's the real question mark.
No, at the end of the day, I don't see the reduction in non-sanctioned Russian oil. This only applies to sanctioned Russian oil, and that has already been scaled down. So it's not something that will happen now, Peter. It's already been scaled down, as we've seen over the last year. What the modalities on Venezuelan oil will be, yes, that we'll only know in the next few days. But we do have the capacity to refine that oil. What the prices are, we'll have to, of course, wait and watch this space for more. But you didn't answer my question, Peter. I was trying to ask you about the way forward on the other aspects now of our relationship and partnership. How are we going to converge on those issues? And do you hope we will? And
well,
here I mean defense and security and other strategic cooperation areas too.
Well, I think we will. But, it's politics as usual. And so we're dealing with politicians here. And they have to answer to their constituents who are the voters. And so I think that, eventually there will be. But I want to get back to the other point, about the sanctions. It's very true. But remember that if Trump can bring a peace deal between the Ukraine and Russia, that a lot of those sanctions will be moved. And so that gives a free hand to other nations.
Yes, the timing also now, Arvind Mahajan, of this agreement, as you were saying, it's it's pretty interesting that it comes at a time when India has been signing these other deals. It comes very soon after the EU agreement was signed as well. Just about I think about a week ago. Not even that. It happened just last week, and we did see how Scott Bessent reacted, the US Treasury Secretary reacted very, very sarcastically to that agreement coming through. Also, there were many analysts who were saying that this agreement was pretty much done. It just needed the ratification at the top. So that didn't take very long. So the timing of it is very, very crucial as well, Arvind. Don't you agree? And do you believe now that there will be a hope that the meeting also between PM Modi and President Trump, the next meeting, they've already met once since President Trump took office last year. We've seen multiple phone conversations, but are you hopeful that another meeting also will happen perhaps sooner rather than later this year, preferably, which will lead to many more agreements and many more convergence areas?
Yeah, I think so. And, you know, I must say that this was a very well kept secret. I mean, Trump made this announcement on social media.
Peter, I'm going to have to just stop you there because Arvind also wants to answer that. That question was for him.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Can you repeat the question?
Okay, I'll ask you another question. Why don't we let Peter answer that since he was answering that? Peter Cardello, please go ahead.
What I was saying is this was a fairly good kept secret.
Yes.
We didn't hear much about this, about these talks between the Prime Minister of India and the Prime Minister of the United States, and we got hit with it on this on Trump's social network and then an official. But I will say this, that if you looked at what happened to yesterday's stock markets, right, they applauded this agreement, even though, as we said before, it's cosmetic. I think that that's a key point here. Even though we
the
don't
stock
know
market indices
all
have
of
gone
the
up. Yeah,
details.
the stock markets do give a sort of an understanding of the investor sentiment, and you're right. They have reacted very, very positively to this agreement, which was highly awaited. Where does this then take our relationship now forward, Raymond Vickery? Because there are many other areas, rather than, as you were saying very rightly just a few minutes back, everything is not transactional. There is a lot of else that defines this India-US partnership and relationship that you also have worked towards and you also have analyzed in great detail. Are you hoping now that those areas of convergence will also continue like we are seeing with the foreign minister's visit for the rare earth summit that is taking place in the US right now? So rare earth, rare minerals, something that we can look at doing partnership on. Many other areas of defense and security. We are hoping the Quad summit also happens this year and President Trump comes physically for it to India.
Well, it's absolutely true that this agreement, no matter how loosely it is drawn, relieves the pressure and allows us to move forward in each of those areas that you've indicated. I think the Quad is the perfect example. We were supposed to have a summit in India last year. In reality, what happened was that this impasse and the downward spiral held up that meeting. And that's very important in terms of coordination between the US and India and Japan and Australia vis-a-vis China. So that's a perfect example. And then the rare earths is another area. So what is happening in this system in the United States is that those who work on these problems, who are in the administration, look to President Trump, no matter how erratic or mercurial he is, for permission, if you will, to move forward. And so long as he's holding up a deal, which he did for nearly a year, this basic deal was on the table almost a year ago.
Absolutely.
And it's other factors which have caused it to come about at this time. But It's a welcome development to allow us to move forward.
It is certainly a welcome development. Arvind Mahajan, I'm almost out of time. The last word to you on the way forward, 60 seconds.
Well, I think behind the scenes, the Indian team and the US team have been working diligently on the trade deal. I think the announcement made, I'm not sure why it was made at this juncture. Maybe it was made to mute the effect of the India-EU trade deal. But again, until we know the details, and this is not out of the blue, This is not a surprise. People had been working on this deal very diligently all this time, notwithstanding the political statements which have been made. I think India and US are going to move forward together. There are going to be road bumps because India has stated very clearly that it does not want to compromise its sovereignty by capitulating to the needs or demands of another country. And therefore, I think there'll be ups and downs, but I think the thing will move forward because both the countries have a lot to gain from each other in the context of geopolitics, of where China stands, where Russia stands, and where the EU stands. India has become, in some ways, a linchpin connecting these major powers with the medium powers. And I think, therefore, the movement forward is not going to be devoid of road bumps, but I think it will move forward. And on this particular deal, we anxiously await the details because,
Indeed.
like I said, India is not willy-nilly
Okay.
going to open up its
Yes.
agriculture sector completely,
No, those
etc.
those fine lines have been outlined. Those fine lines have been outlined, and it's been mentioned by our Union Commerce and Industry Minister today that those fine lines have been respected by the US as well. But yes, we are expecting a joint statement by both sides perhaps this week, and we'll hear more finer details then. For the time being, my thanks to all of our guests for joining us in this discussion. Let's slip into a very short break.